picking someone like Dylan Mulvaney, who is quite controversial, for that person to then be the representation of the trans community by Lady Gaga on International Women's Day, that is a bit of like, oh, when it comes to like women's spaces or International Women's Day or anything that involves womanhood, I always try and be very, very careful, very, very sensitive. And I'm always very aware that I am a guest in the world of being a woman, not a rightful owner, let's say.
All right, so I'm a little bit late to this party. I'm talking about Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney went viral a couple of times, like a few weeks ago. Once because Lady Gaga shouted him out on National Women's Day or something like that. And second time because he put out this horrible pop song about, you know, the 300 days of a girlhood, and he was just laying out the most stereotypical toxic sides of being a woman and just stereotypes, meaning he has no idea what girlhood actually is. To them, it's just a character. It's just a character that they put on like a costume. Anyhow, this video is not really about that. This video is about another transgender YouTuber who asked a question to biological women, and at least it felt like a question to me. Her name is Alexis Blake, and I really like her. She seems well-rounded, and I believe she's truly trans. And she had a question because she was saying that she feels really conflicted with the anger that people had towards Lady Gaga and Dylan Mulvaney when they posted this shout out on Women's Day, on National Women's Day, because she said in one sense she really does feel like a woman. She acknowledges that she is not a biological woman. She's never said that. She says she is a guest in this space, but she still feels like a woman. So she also celebrated National Women's Day. And so in her mind, she doesn't see anything wrong with, you know, a trans woman celebrating National Women's Day. She does acknowledge the fact that Dylan Mulvaney is a toxic character, and she doesn't understand why Lady Gaga used Dylan as a, I don't know, as a face for women of the trans community, right?
When I've looked into it, there is the drama because it's posted on International Women's Day. People are either super supportive or super against. There's no sort of in the middle, like bridging both, like trying to understand why each side feels each way. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do in this video today. But of course, it goes without saying, as I am a trans woman, I will probably empathize and understand. So this was the initial picture, and the caption read, "Happy International Women's Day, Lady Gaga." There is currently 4,000 comments on that, and I would say it's a roughly half and half split. From what I've gathered so far, a lot of people are upset because Dylan was posting about it on International Women's Day, and a lot of people were stating that a trans woman is not a woman. And of course, this is going to give me conflicting opinions, and it's going to hit home with me, this sort of thing. So I try and always look at every argument from every side possible to try and understand the best I can. It's a really hard one for me to discuss, this one, because the backlash, partly a lot of it is coming from biological women. So I'm trying to understand that mindset and where it's coming from fully from a biological woman's point of view, which obviously I can't do because I always say this, I'm biologically male. I'm very aware of that. It's just science. But I am a trans woman, so I'm trying to understand it from that point of view as well. But what I have gathered, obviously, International Women's Day is there to celebrate women, and there is the argument that a trans woman is born biologically male, and that's why I think people have an issue with it. I myself did celebrate on International Women's Day, and I don't know if that's going to rub people the wrong way. It's a hard one because I'm always personally, when it comes to like women's spaces or International Women's Day or anything that involves womanhood, I always try and be very, very careful, very, very sensitive. And I'm always very aware that I am a guest in the world of being a woman, not a rightful owner, let's say. I hope that makes sense. Picking someone like Dylan Mulvaney, who is quite controversial, so I can kind of get a little bit on both sides of how people feel and how people have been made to feel. I am looking at it from a trans woman's point of view, so it is hard for me to fully sympathize and understand from a biological woman's point of view, but I will always do my best.
But she also was like, she kind of, Alexis, seemed to have the question of like, why are biological women and so many people so angry towards this? Like, you know, what is the big deal in a way, right? Because she, and I acknowledge too, because Lady Gaga put out a post after the backlash and said that so many hate comments, right? And then other conservative talking heads came out and said they're not hate comments, they're just factual statements. Dylan Mulvaney is not a woman. They're not a female, right? But Alexis said that no, she read the comments and some of them are hate comments, some of them are really disgusting, horrible, attack, vile, and I agree with her. They probably are. are.
After the picture went viral and quite a lot of hatred and negativity, I would say, was thrown at Dylan Mulvaney, Lady Gaga did post the picture herself onto her own Instagram and put this following caption underneath. I'm just going to pull out some bits because it's quite long. But the main things to note that it's appalling to me that a post about International Women's Day, Dylan Mulvaney, would be met with such vitriol and hatred. When I see a newspaper reporting on hatred but calling it backlash, I feel it is important to clarify that hatred is hatred and this kind of hatred is violence. From what I've gathered so far, a lot of people are upset because Dylan was posting about it on International Women's Day and a lot of people were stating that a trans woman is not a woman. And of course, this is going to give me conflicting opinions and it's going to hit home with me, this sort of thing. So I try and always look at every argument from every side possible to try and understand the best I can. But it is quite hard when you go through some of the comments. They are quite brutal. But I do want to look at the other side. So we are going to look at a very popular content creator here on YouTube as they are opposed to the picture.
Considering, again, this went out on International Women's Day. So we all know what the message is that's trying to be brought forth. It's just so interesting to see somebody use a day like International Women's Day to highlight a small subset of the population that seems to think that they are women. This is not a woman being celebrated on International Women's Day. It is, in fact, a man who believes that they are somehow a woman being celebrated on International Women's Day.
It's a really hard one for me to discuss this one because the backlash, partly, a lot of it is coming from biological women. So I'm trying to understand that mindset and where it's coming from fully from a biological woman's point of view, which obviously I can't do because I always say this, I'm biologically male. I'm very aware of that. It's just science. But I am a trans woman, so I'm trying to understand it from that point of view as well. But what I have gathered, obviously, International Women's Day is there to celebrate women. And there is the argument that a trans woman is born biologically male. And that's why I think people have an issue with it. I think generalising it and blanket statement it, all the comments under that people are just pointing out the truth, possibly is misleading because that's not what the comments are on the full video, on the Instagram post. If you go and look on the Instagram post, the original one, I personally would lean it more towards hatred. This is a problem I have here, this is the problem that I sort of see, is that some of the comments like you're a biological man, which is very much factual. It's obviously coming from a nasty place, but it is very much factual. If someone comments that on this video, for instance, it's a fact. It's just what it is. But when you go through the comments, I believe it leans more towards hatred. I really, really do. It's quite dark and it's quite intense.
My response to that is not to necessarily say those comments were okay, but to tell Alexis, sometimes when people feel like they're being silenced all the time, when they're told to shut up, when they're told to be quiet, when they're told to sit down, when they're told that their lived experience and their feelings and their safety doesn't matter, their daughter's safety doesn't matter, what they have to say as biological women who actually went to girlhood and actually went to womanhood, your opinion doesn't matter, your thoughts doesn't matter, your facts doesn't matter. When people constantly feel like they're not being heard, they're going to start to yell. They're going to start to scream, they're gonna start to stomp, they're gonna start to say things to get your attention, because when they tried to quietly say it before, when they tried to have a reasonable conversation, they were told to shut up, be quiet, sit down, you do not matter. That's when people start to get loud, right? Biological females constantly feel like they're being told to be empathetic to trans people's lived experience, to be understanding, to see it their way, right? But then when biological women speak up and say like, okay, cool, this is how we see it. We want you to be empathetic to our lived experience. We want you to be empathetic to our perspective and our perception. And we don't get the same respect in return, then we're gonna be like, well, how can you ask for respect when you're not giving respect, right? When biological women, again, say like this is our concerns and you're told to shut up and you're transphobic and you're being canceled, then you can't ask for the same in return. Women, females, not to be sexist or anything, but women, most women are just hardwired to be empathetic and listen to someone's sob stories about their lived experience. Women have bent over backwards to be empathetic towards the trans experience, but the trans community, and I'm not talking about all trans people, it's mostly trans activists, non-binary, trans TikTokers who don't want to hear our side, so we're going to scream, we're going to yell, we're going to start getting upset because you're not willing to listen. You're not willing to come to the middle. You're not willing to come to the table and have a conversation with us, so we're going to put up a big fuck you when you ask for empathy from us. It has to go both ways. Empathy and respect goes both ways. Not necessarily empathy, but respect goes both ways. And this is why people are really upset. Are there transphobic people mixed into the mix of people who just are frustrated with what's going on with biological females and girls feeling like their spaces are being erased, their identity is being erased or put on like a costume? Yes, of course. Of course there's actual transphobic people and actual transphobe and actual homophobic people mixed into the conversation. But that doesn't mean that all of us needs to be silenced and all of us needs to be shut down. Until the trans community as a whole, or to trans activists or whatever, the TikTok conversations become more centered and more well-rounded, and biological females' voices are heard, our concerns are taken seriously, and we're not constantly being told that's not happening, shut up, sit down. We're not constantly being told that biological women aren't being assaulted in female prisons by biological men.
This is a dangerous, violent sex offender, a double rapist once known as Adam Graham. And here is the same person now identifying as a woman, Isla Bryson, a predator who's been detained in a women's prison.
When you're telling us that adolescent teenage girls are not being assaulted in female bathrooms by biological men who are identifying as women, and then the assault is being covered up in the name of trans rights or trans protection, and you keep telling us that's not happening, that parents are having their daughters assaulted by biological men in female bathrooms in high schools, and it's not taken seriously because of the fear of trans activist backlash, those things aren't happening, you're going to start pissing people off.
Parents accusing Superintendent Scott Ziegler of covering up 2 sexual assaults by a 14-year-old student on school grounds and calling for Ziegler's and the board's resignation. The boy found guilty this week in the first case to be heard by a judge. Earlier this week, students staged a walkout.
Resign or be removed. Shame on you.
Garland was confronted on this issue too. The victim's father arrested at a June school board meeting while trying to tell the school board what happened.
That refers to Scott Smith, whose 15-year-old daughter was raped. She was raped in a bathroom by a boy wearing girls' clothes, and the Loudoun County School Board covered it up because it would have interfered with their transgendered policy during Pride Month.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and only ladies and gentlemen it is and shall always be. I am an 18-year-old high school student and wanted to take this time to bring to your attention the current issue with biological men claiming they are women and in turn truly believing that they are entitled to use women's spaces. There was an incident within our district that occurred recently regarding a transgender woman who really is a biological man having an altercation with a young woman at MLK High School. It was infuriating when I had seen the video on social media, but what was detrimental to this is the fact that this man is and has been using the women's restroom and locker room. Firstly, the question we must address is why are we affirming the mental confusion of this boy and putting the safety of women in jeopardy by allowing mentally confused men to use the women's spaces? Of course, any male who claims he is a woman will accept it, but what about the women? What about the true girls like myself who are female down to our DNA? Why don't we ever get a say in whether or not we are comfortable with this? The truth is, we aren't.
I also want to make it very clear, to me anyway, the biological men committing these assaults or attacks are not actually trans women, but these are pervy men and boys taking advantage of the self-ID policies that trans activists has pushed. But anytime biological women or even trans people like Blair White bring these up, as she did on the last Jubilee Middle Ground debate, they're yelled at and called transphobic. They're yelled at and being told these are just right-wing Republican conservative talking points and that these things aren't really happening. Or, more disgustingly so, if they are happening, who cares? It's only a couple of people that's being attacked, so why should we even talk about it? When you're telling us that females losing scholarship opportunities because biological men are entering in our sports space, that's not happening. When you tell us that women aren't being forced to look at male genitalia in the female bathrooms or shower rooms, or little girls aren't forced to look at male genitalia in their space, in their safe space, when you keep telling us that's not happening,
We're here in Randolph, Vermont, where a group of high school girls is facing backlash for daring to speak out against a biological male using their locker room.
The school system is failing the volleyball girls. They are putting the trans students' needs above ours because it is one person.
If you're on that team, you're a woman and you have a biological male who's intact, who's having sex with women, walking around naked in the locker room with women, and if you're uncomfortable with that, you should educate yourself. And learn how to use she, her pronouns and accept defeat.
You said it.
To this person that's not a woman.
You said it.
And the whole idea behind Title IX was supposed to be to protect women's sports. It's supposed to be to have a place where women can compete fairly against women.
Yeah.
And because of this insane cult that 45% of the country's in, or whatever it is, you have to deal with this literal mental patient in a woman's sport dominating, and everyone's cheering.
Yes.
And everyone around it that's watching it is upset. All the parents, probably on both teams.
Of course.
All the women that are competing with this man. And the whole world's like, yay, diversity. And you must feel like you're in a fucking movie or something.
Well, I'll tell you, really what had thrusted me over the edge into no longer being willing to lie. He swam the 500 freestyle and won a national title, beat out Olympians, beating out American record holders, right? Keep in mind, these aren't scrubs. They're the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers this world has ever seen. And again, he beat them all by body lengths. 1 second might not sound like a lot of time, but in the sport of swimming, again, measured down to the 100th of a second, 1 second is significant. He beat the entire nation of women by almost 2 full seconds. Even the time he went last year would have beat every girl in the country this past season by nearly 2 full seconds. Making him the first man to win a Division I NCAA women's title.
When you keep telling us these things aren't happening, when you keep telling us that female spaces aren't being erased, when femalehood and girlhood isn't being taken over and hoodwinked, you keep telling us that our identity isn't being appropriated. When you keep telling us those things aren't happening, that we're all delusional, these are all just right-wing talking points and conservative talking points. Therefore, because we all know conservatives, they all need to be silenced, right? Nothing they say should be heard. But because of that, because you belong to the evil group or their talking points, we're not allowed to speak. When that keeps happening, then people are going to start getting angry. I also want to make it very clear when I say you, I am not pointing at a particular person or a particular individual. I'm definitely not pointing at Alexis. I'm just using you as a generalization. So Alexis Blake, I think that's how you pronounce your name, and if it's not how you pronounce your name, I apologize. That's why people are getting upset. I know as an individual that is not all trans people, and I feel bad that most other trans people who are minding their own business are now paying the price for this. I feel bad about that. You seem like a lovely person and a lovely human being, and I really do enjoy your videos.
I understand why women would be upset. I really do. Obviously, International Women's Day is there to celebrate women. Women are still continuously fighting for equal rights, and I get why women would be upset that Lady Gaga chose to shine the light maybe on a trans woman on International Women's Day and not maybe a biological woman who's taking on the world and who's doing fabulous things. I think that they're all the sort of the balancing, like looking at both sides of it.
But unfortunately, because a lot of trans people are just minding their business or don't want to speak out against this stuff, a lot of other normie people then color the entire community with the same brush, which is not okay, which is not right. But that's what happens because that's just kind of human nature. Anyway, that is the reason why people are so upset about the Dylan Mulvaney thing, and not just Dylan Mulvaney. It's just, it feels like, again, girlhood, womanhood, female spaces are being erased and taken away from us. And I'm not a feminist, but a lot of women came before me and fought really hard to have those rights, to have those spaces, and to have those protections. And women, biological women, are just not going to lay down and let those things be taken away. Anyway, again, please no hate towards Alexis at all. This is just a response. I love you, girl. Keep doing you. And you guys, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to get the notifications when you do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. If you'd like to support this channel, you can donate. My PayPal and Cash App link is in the comment section down below. And also let me know what you guys think of this video, what I said, what Alexis says, also in the comment section below. And you guys have an amazing, beautiful day. Bye.